So I'm here today talking to Chris Moore at the Chesapeake Bay Foundation in Norfolk about Menhaden overfishing. And Chris is going to tell us why Menhaden are so important to the bay, what's coming up, trying to support the fishery, and what we can do to help. Chris, what are Menhaden and why are they so important?
Menhaden are one of our keystone species in Chesapeake Bay and along the entire Atlantic coast. They're a species that really serves as a primary protein source for not only a lot of fish, which I think is why most people are interested in them, but for a lot of birds like ospreys and for a lot of marine mammals like dolphins that we have here in the lower bay especially.
And cranes, and they feed on the big fish, eat the little fish?
Yeah.
Okay.
Menhaden are a good example of a fish that is out in the ecosystem to be eaten by other things, whether it's rockfish or striped bass, sharks, or things that fly around like ospreys, eagles. People love watching ospreys along the water catch menhaden, we know that. And then I think what people sometimes don't realize is they're important to marine mammal diets in the area. We had a tremendous number of whales off Virginia Beach all this past fall and winter, and a lot of that was because they were eating amongst the menhaden schools. But dolphins as well, which are a regular visitor here in lower Chesapeake Bay especially, but even up in the mid-bay, are also dependent upon menhaden for at least parts of their diet during the season.
But we're having a problem with overfishing.
Yeah, unfortunately, the menhaden population is down about 88% from its historical highs. We have a very long-term data set on menhaden. It actually goes back to about 1955, and so we have pretty good information for this fishery compared to a lot of others that we are somewhat data lacking on. And with menhaden, we know that the population has gone through several ups and downs, but we are definitely right now, unfortunately, in a prolonged period of the population not being up like we would hope it would be. And we hope that the regulatory and conservation measures that we are getting ready to enter and start to implement over the next couple of years are going to change that scenario. And much like we've seen with blue crabs here in Chesapeake Bay, we're going to start to see the population move in an upward direction and have a healthier population that will not only support its ecosystem kind of services as a fish to be out there being eaten by lots of other fish, marine mammals, and birds, but also will help increase the commercial fisheries that we have out there for them and make them more viable in the future as well.
So how exactly are you going to help with the overfishing?
Well, the ASMFC, the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, manages the menhaden population on a coast-wide basis. And the states along the Atlantic coast are partners in that effort. So ASMFC basically sets a 10,000-foot management plan that the states then adopt, and they may tweak in each state to make it most easily worked upon by their various state agencies and things like that. But they'll come up with a management plan that seeks to, in this case, probably reduce harvest by some amount, but also sets at least a framework for maybe some seasonal closures or maybe some gear restrictions or things like that that will adjust the harvest rate downward at this point to allow the population to recover. A lot of our focus with the menhaden plan right now is to making sure we have enough adult spawning fish in the population moving forward so that when we have the right environmental conditions out there, that those fish will successfully spawn and bring the population back to a level that I think we all know it should be at. And if you look at our population right now, we are somewhere around 8% of what the estimated unfished population would be. And what that means is basically if we took all of our fishing pressure off menhaden, whether it's the reduction fishery or the bait fishery or some of the smaller bait fisheries that we have operating along the coast, we have about only 8% of what would be out there if none of those fisheries were in place. So what we want to do is to try to increase that number, and we probably knowingly can't get it back to 100% with all the different pressures on it, but the management plan that we have in place seeks to at least double that from what we have now, and then possibly even make another doubling on that in terms of the size of the population.
So your management plan includes adjusting the harvest rate downward, which means exactly what?
We don't actually know right yet. What the time frame we're in right now is actually the Atlantic States Marine and Fisheries Commission until Friday, April 20th, will be taking comment on what they have out there called a public information document. And that's kind of a scoping document that looks at various options we have to manage the fishery differently in the future. And it could be things that are very common in fisheries management, like what we call a TAC, or a total allowable catch. It could be seasonal closures. It could be area closures. You know, we could close parts of the Atlantic coast for a couple months at a time. We may close the season earlier. Right now, they can fish until late November in most of Virginia, but we could theoretically cut that back. There's all sorts of different options they're looking at doing, and right now, that scoping document is giving ASMFC, through the public comment process, an idea of what options the public would like to see in order to get the fishery to an area where we can see the population restore.